The real low point is when your wife calls you because her debit card is not working at the supermarket and she's
Mm.
got groceries all lined up on the checkout counter. There's people behind her and she can't check out. And there was nothing I could do about it.
Welcome to the Scalability Code, the podcast that helps you get out of the shit show and start growing your business. And now for your host, Matt Haney.
Again, another episode of the Scalability Code. And today I have a 20-year friend of mine and former boss, Jason Lippman. Jason, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
So as we do with every episode, I encourage my guests to go back and think through their entrepreneurs that were mentors to them or people that gave them their entrepreneurial start or their journey. Because I think those are some of the most impressionable times we've had as young people that are young business owners. And I don't think we go back and look enough. So think for a second if you could go back to some of the influences on your life that got you to be an entrepreneur. And ideally, if there were any leadership traits that they've had that impressioned you, and just give us a little backstory.
Yeah, I started my career at Arthur Andersen, which most people would not think of when they think of entrepreneurism because it's a big behemoth and accounting firm. But I was in the consulting division and it was kind of shockingly entrepreneurial. And all the managers there, first of all, everyone at Arthur Andersen, not including myself, are super smart, super driven. And you surround yourself around all those people and it can be quite inspiring. And one person, when I was working there, told me like the one reason that you don't leave is when you leave, you'll never find this kind of team again, like the quality of talent up and down the chain where everyone cares about what they're doing and they're professional and they're focused on what's important and it's not political and blah, blah, blah. And so really Arthur Andersen really kind of inspired more of my entrepreneurial journey than you'd expect, because all those people that I worked for, they were all trying to build a business, build a book of business, marketing plans, responsible for bottom line profitability. They were responsible for recruiting team members, super dependent on making sure that they got the good ones and treating them well and doing well on projects, getting more work out of existing clients. I mean, all the things that a small business owner would do. Again, all within the safety of I was getting paid every 2 weeks, which is a pretty big difference, but still very entrepreneurial, very goal driven. And I knew that eventually, like if I did ever leave, which I was not planning on leaving Arthur Andersen, but I knew if I ever did leave, that eventually I'd be starting to run my own deal.
Well, I'm going to ask you to go back even further because I think you grew up in an entrepreneurial family. I think your dad, who I happen to know and have met for years, you guys worked together at some point. I don't remember his whole story, but I know at some point he went out on his own and as an entrepreneur. But give me that. Did you see him growing up, and as a child, was he working in businesses and out and crushing it, or what was his story?
Yeah, I never really thought of my dad as being an entrepreneur. He certainly was. I just didn't think of it that way. He worked for the same company for 30 years. It was during the heyday of roll-ups and restructurings, and he never knew whether this was going to be the time. He was kind of a mid-level management and was never knew okay, was this going to be the time if he gets outsourced or restructured or downsized? And downsized was the word of the day back then.
Right.
And so it was very important to him to stay in El Paso. We had family roots there that he had built and was very important to him. And so he started buying rental properties on the side so that if he did get downsized, he had something to go to, because he was an engineer. If he didn't work for El Paso Natural Gas in El Paso, that was your only, you were going to have to move to Houston. That was the only option.
That was
and
it.
So I'm not sure I thought about the entrepreneurial influence. The thing that he really showed me without telling me is the work ethic that was required. I do remember him. He'd work all day, 9 to 5 and come home and say hi. And then he had a separate office and he'd go into that and go work on the real estate. And then on the weekends, we'd go and clean houses and fix shit. And, that was my life growing up. And those lessons, as much as I'm sure I hated it because I wanted to go play soccer or hang out with friends or ride bikes or whatever. And I was doing maintenance on apartments in East El Paso, which there's a lot of other lessons to be learned there too. But he ended up retiring, then starting a consulting firm, built that, sold it. So he certainly is an entrepreneur, but I just didn't, I saw it more as damn, he worked his ass off. And still does.
Still does. That's awesome. Okay, so I had this conversation with George Spinelli, who we have mutual friends with. George was early to an industry And you were early to an industry as well, before the days of the VRBO. Give the backstory. I can't remember the name of the company, but the concept was fractional ownership of homes. Wasn't that the concept? What was that story? And what year was that?
Yeah, gosh, I'm terrible with years. I'm
It
just
was
like, I've
over
never,
20 years ago. I
but
know that.
yeah, it makes me feel really old. But yeah, I was working for an advertising agency that was helping build some Nextel guys that started. This is after the .com crash, so you can put those years together.
Yeah.
And one of the partners had a 20 unit condo building in Telluride that had helped me put some marketing plans together. And I met with a bunch of agents there, as well as high net worth individuals who were target buyers. And I caught the same feedback from all of them, is that they all wanted to own a second home, but frankly, they wanted it to be in Telluride, but they also wanted a place in Cabo for the beach and over here for golf. And there was no option for that. And so I came back to them and said, hey, why don't we start a company that goes around and buys high-end second homes, and we sell it as a club membership. Somewhat of a unique idea at the time.
Certainly.
And about 9 months into it, I still remember this day, one of the more influential people in my life, someone who could cut through a very complicated situation. His name was Tom Martin. He was the chief marketing officer at Dell. And he cut through all the noise and get to the heart of a matter within like 2 or 3 minutes. It was amazing. Super, super smart guy. And so him and I started this high-end club for second home ownership. But like I was saying, 9 months into it, we were reading the Wall Street Journal, which he actually did back in the day.
Yep.
And there was a full-page ad for a company called Exclusive Resorts that was advertising basically the same exact thing. But they had a full-page ad in the Wall Street Journal. I remember going to Tom's office, and I went to Tom and I said, Tom, the price of poker has just changed. And I showed him the article, and he sat there and looked at it. Looked at me and said, well, we got 2 choices. We either go raise a shitload of money and compete, or we have to sell to these guys. And so I went back to my office. I did not want to go raise a shitload of money. I wasn't that confident in the concept enough to go raise $30-40 million that we'd have to go raise. So I called the company. The CEO was nice enough and took the call. And 2 days later, I was in their offices in Denver, 48 hours of negotiations, and we sold the entire company. And I remember getting back on the plane and coming back and realizing like, oh shit, I just sold myself out of a job.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it wasn't
Not only
like a
do I
huge
have the
win.
assets.
We were 9 months into it. Tom had put all the money in. So I was getting a nice, almost more severance package for my quote unquote first exit. I wish it was more, but
what was after that?
That's when I started Home Techs. You're in
Yes.
water.
That is so crazy.
Yeah. Well, and that was just, again, just finding a need in the marketplace. I had all these friends through the years. Because I'd been, like my dad, had been buying real estate on the side. So I had a decent little portfolio built out. But there's only so much you can build on your own because of the way financing is structured. And so I always had friends that would come and go, oh man, can you help me buy a house? I really want to do this. I want to build a portfolio and stuff. And so I'd share like, yeah, here's the books I read. Here's the things I did. Here's what I'm doing. It wasn't competitive because there's only so many houses I could buy at the time. And none of them ever did anything because, they didn't like it as much as I did. They probably didn't want to go drive around and look at shitty houses on Saturdays. For me, that was pretty fun. They certainly didn't want to fix them up or deal with tenants. And I was already used to doing all that. So that's how I started Home Techs and built up that company. I do remember the timing on that because, when you lose all your money, you remember those years.
We have to tell part of this story because I think this is interesting. Jason actually hired me. I think he was my first real job out of college. I'd worked restaurants and done a bunch of other stuff. And he and I had a friend in common, Meryl, actually connected us together. She got an introduction to Jason. He's like, well, what do you know how to do? And I was like, I don't think I really know how to do anything, but I'm going to work hard and I'm going to work through it. And I remember going through foreclosure notices and just running the sheet, driving by, doing the best analysis we could on each property based on the major systems that could or couldn't go wrong in a purchase. And then fond memories of standing at the Travis County Courthouse on the steps, bidding on foreclosure properties. And it was a ton of fun. Here I am watching Jason spin all the plates and figure all this out. And then there's a property management company in this side of the office that's trying to deal with all the people in the world and hundreds of houses. And do you remember the numbers on what the portfolio was at one point?
Yeah, we got up to 350 houses under management. That we had owned and managed.
That's a lot of shit to manage, figuratively and literally.
Yeah. And it would have been a lot better. Like we started the business in 2005, and it would have been a lot better if we would have started in 2007. So we would have only had like a year before the shit hit the fan in 2008, but we had 3 years. And so we had three home investor franchises. As you know, we had a property
Yep.
management company. We had all the maintenance that goes with that. We had a fix up cruise. We had the title company that we started. We had the mortgage bank. And so we were fully vertically integrated, which is great when the market is going up. Vertical integration when the market goes down, it just means everything doesn't work. And in 2008, like absolutely everything didn't work, and I lost everything that I'd ever made plus some. And when I tell people that, like, I lost all my money plus some, they're like, well, how's the plus some? And it's like, that's when you lose everything and you still owe people money that you have to pay back. And I did have to do that. So we had to. Yeah, I learned a lot more. As I think every entrepreneur will tell you that, you learn a lot more on the way down
Yeah.
that you do on the way up. But I learned a ton on the way down. Some of it was mistakes we made, and then also some of it was just like, no matter what we did, the market was the market. There was
Yep.
no way we were going to
Outsmart it or beat
survive
it or
that.
do something different.
know.
It was just,
And so it's
yeah.
pretty funny, when we fast forward, another 5 years from there, and then all of a sudden, all these Wall Street guys thinks it's a great idea. Blackstones of the world, they start buying up all these houses and renting them out, and think that that's a good model. Yeah. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not.
Are they still buying? They still doing that, or did they close all that stuff down?
No.
Yeah.
And you can't make that work, especially if their overhead in it and stuff.
Yeah.
It's I had one person. I had probably 100% conversion rate. Every investor that was interested, because it was such an easy deal for them to sign up with us and go buy houses
Yeah.
and rent them out. We did everything. I mean, literally every single person I ever met with, like, that got referred to us, like, signed up. And there was one gentleman in Austin who I thought was like a perfect, guy to sign up, and he said, he didn't want to, and I was like, oh gosh, this is the first time someone like literally told me no, and I asked him, like, I don't get it, help me understand or whatever, and he's like, he just did not like the friction in the single family housing model, and I did not know what he meant. I mean, I was just like, friction? What are you talking
What?
about? This is easy. We go out, buy houses, we fix them up, we rent them out, we do it again. It's the same thing or whatever. And he was just talking about the friction of, there's just no economies of scale when you're buying one house in different neighborhoods. As you learned, as you were working for me, every house was different. Every tenant's different. Every neighborhood was different. Every market was different. I mean, we learned how different Fort Worth was from Austin. And so it wasn't until we had 350 houses that I understood, oh, that's what he meant.
Yeah.
Friction. Cam Cronenberg, awesome investor, super smart guy, made a shit ton of money, I'm sure.
Yep.
And I still remember that conversation because I did not get it. I left that meeting going, get it. He doesn't understand.
Go to the next guy that says yes.
Yeah, exactly. It didn't stop me for a second until I was like,
What a messy business too. I mean, I just go back to all of the things, and then you scale it, and then you have all the things scaled. It's all of the problems, but all the people. Although I will say, I go back and think of some of the faces that were in the office and the characters that we came across. The management company specifically, a lot of hardworking people, a lot of folks that had gone through hardship, but we dealt, oh my God, all the hardships that you had to hear, all the challenges that people were going through. And it was a very dynamic time, to say the very least. So, okay, so that happens. That's a low point, right? 09?
pretty low. The real low point is when your wife calls you because her debit card is not working at the supermarket, and she's got groceries all lined up on the checkout counter. There's people behind her, and she can't check out because and there was nothing I could do about it. Like, we literally didn't have the money. So if you want to talk low points, that's a moment that will always stick with me. I'm honest and talk about it, because it was that bad. And by the time, and I should have just, I should have filed bankruptcy. It would have been a lot easier, a lot less painful, a lot faster. In the long term, I had to go get a job, and which will lead us into my next career. But how our marriage survived that, I'm not sure, to be honest. It probably shouldn't have.
Well, I happen to know
not that
your
particular
wife.
moment, but
overall, but in general,
it's pretty hard
I know
for a marriage
Angie,
to survive.
She's a fighter and a saint herself, and the same. Pretty tough woman. That's what we both married into these strong personalities by design, and they have both stuck with us over the years. How many years have you guys been married now? 20-ish,
We're 29.
25, 29.
29 will be this April.
That's crazy. Carol and I still were at
March, I'm sorry.
19. Okay, so you had the low point, and then I love this. The high point of the story is keep building. So let's get to the next thing. Then you went to, was it Far West?
Yeah.
Tell us about that business, because it took me a minute to understand this business, and I love what I know about it now. So set up kind of where you were, and then kind of where it went today.
Yeah, I mean, I had a good relationship with the bank that helped finance some of my real estate. That bank sold right before the downturn, so their timing was great. And two guys spun out of that and started their own factoring company, Cole Harmonson and Don Strickland. And I was friends with Cole, helped him get into EO. He was helping me on what to do on my workout side. And so once I finally got everything shut down and realized I needed to find a job, I was going back to my Rolodex and literally asked for a favor. And I still remember the email that I sent him. That was basically, I call it on my knees kind of email, because I didn't know the industry. I knew nothing about it. I needed a job. And he gave me an opportunity to help him build that company. Met him for lunch. I still, went out to the car and Googled what factoring was, because I really did not know what it was. And I was like, oh, that seems pretty cool. Companies sell and they get accounts receivable, but they need the cash today, and you loan on that, and then you get paid by their customer. I'm like, that sounds pretty easy. It turns out it's like one of the oldest forms of finance around. Especially good in the downturn. It works during growth modes too, but especially in the downturn, is when banks aren't doing something, gives us some alternative to traditional bank financing. But I thought it had pretty limited application, meaning like 1 out of 100 companies would need it or something. Not what I ended up learning, which was there is a huge market for it, a huge need. There is, like anything else, there's a ton of competition, but it was an industry that I could learn really quickly and just grind through in terms of, it was just a lead generation business. Like I just had to get enough leads and go through enough opportunities to find the ones that fit. And at the end of the day, all we do is help solve a timing difference that a company has. But those timing differences are real, where you've got people that got to pay, or subs you got to pay, or expenses you have, and you're waiting to get paid by your customers, and you've got to bridge that gap. And a lot of times we're talking to companies that are actually successful and growing. And working capital is one of the few problems that growth does not solve. It actually makes it worse.
It does make it worse.
When you talk to new entrepreneurs, they're like, I always ask them, like, well, let's say you don't do this. What's the backup plan? What's the alternative? It's like, well, we're growing so fast. I mean, we're not going to need this in 6 months. I'm like, you haven't done this before.
I've heard that 100 times.
Not only are you not going to grow as fast as you think you are, so let's start there.
Right.
But two, if you are that successful, you're actually going to need twice as much than you think. I mean, and so if everyone paid their bills the day that they got invoiced, then we wouldn't have a factoring product.
Yeah.
And then there's a whole bunch of other stuff that goes with it, with asset-based lending and inventory and equipment and all the other things. But at the end of the day, it's a pretty simple business.
Pretty simple business. You're too kind to yourself. So I want to go back. I just dealt with this with one of my clients who sold their company in November. But same thing. We had growth, and that's great. And you're hiring, and but eventually it all's like, oh shit, everything comes together, and you're liquidating 401ks, and you're doing all these things. And we had good contracts and good payment terms. But as you said, the more you put into the top of the funnel, and the more comes through, the more challenges you end up with from a growth perspective. So I love that. That is so true, that new entrepreneurs just assume they'll grow themselves right through it. And sometimes they do, right? But a lot of times you get stalled out with a pipeline of people. And it's like, how can we have so much demand and people fulfilling it, but we're out of cash?
Yeah, and if you have to start, pushing your customers to pay faster, those aren't the kind of conversations you want to have with your customer. You want to figure out how to better serve them, expand the relationship. You don't want to use your, favors and relationships and phone calls on, hey, can you call accounts payable and see if they can pay me tomorrow?
Yeah.
Those are not the conversations that you want to have with your customer. Of course, once the bill starts getting out there, you need to have those kind of conversations. You've got to get paid for the service, or you shouldn't be doing it. But certainly you want to have a different kind of expanding the relationship conversations, not the how can you pay me quicker.
Go back to your team. What was the team look like when you built Infusion? Did you have that model? Obviously, you'd seen what was happening and you were part of the success at Far West. But did you set out to do something different than the way Far West was structured? and kind of talk through the logic as to how you built the team you have today and give us a little insight into who they are and what they do.
Yeah, I think I took a little bit different approach. I mean, it's one of the lessons that I learned at Far West from what we do in terms of the services, the products we were going to offer. All that was exactly the same. We're going to go after the same kind of customers with the same product lines, solving the same problems. We were hopefully going to do it faster, maybe with some better tech and blah blah blah. But at the end of the day, we were doing the same thing. But when it came to staffing, we took a different approach. And that was only because of the lessons I learned, while I was out Far West. The biggest one was our factory business. It's a high touch business. There is a lot of repetition, a lot of back office requirements. And so there is a need for a lot of junior employees. And we had the hardest time, as I'm sure a lot of other businesses do, of hiring junior level employees and keeping them there and keeping them motivated and doing good work. And so when we started the business, I just said, we're going to build a model that doesn't have junior employees. We just weren't going to do it. If it was something that a junior employee needed to do, we were going to figure out a way that either technology was going to do it or it was going to get outsourced. And so that was kind of the biggest differentiator. The second one was we were also trying to do it in Austin. Again, these are two kind of old school bakers. They kind of felt like people needed to be in the office. They needed to see and touch them. I didn't probably have that same sense, but I also knew the market was changing, especially COVID hadn't happened yet. So we were a little bit ahead of that curve where we did not hire for people that the requirement was they were going to have to come to Austin, because I knew I'd be giving up talent, that there were plenty of talented people I could hire that knew the industry, knew what we did. And then we go, well, can you move to Austin? No, or whatever. And so we were virtual ish.
You were virtual. What year did you start? And sort of when you were hiring virtual before virtual was cool, is what you're saying.
Yeah. I mean, we started 7 years ago, like the end of 2018. And yeah, we were ready. Like when COVID hit, it was kind of like obviously there were a lot of things that COVID affected. Yeah. But at least from being in an office structure, things like that. I mean, we had an office here in Austin, so there's a couple of us here because we needed a place to go. But everyone else was outside of Austin. And we continue that today. We have 35 domestic employees. And I think we only have 6 or 7 actually here in Austin, and everyone is spread out through the country. Last year, we had one employee I was talking to and just came up in conversation. She happened to mention that she lives in Mexico. I had no idea. She'd been there for like 6 months. I mean, and this is someone I talk to 2-3 times a week, probably. It shows my interpersonal skills there. Yeah. That I had no idea that she lived in Mexico, but she was doing her job, getting shit done. It didn't matter to me. It still doesn't. So that was one of the biggest differences. So there's 2 components of that. Not forcing everyone to a specific geographic location, which means then you have to have kind of the teams structure all that stuff. But it also, like, you can do that because you don't have junior employees, because junior employees are technically easier to manage and they need an environment to learn. And those kind of things are harder to do. I don't care how much Zoom and Teams and all that bullshit that you do.
You still have
it's just harder to learn that way. So all the junior level function we outsourced to India from day one. And that was a lot easier because we started with like, 2 employees in India doing a bunch of stuff. And then it's just so much easier if you start that way than trying to take a whole function that you have 10 people in the US that have a fiefdom and don't want to get fired and having to outsource. So when you start by outsourcing it all right from the jump, it's a lot easier. So we've just built out that team. We have 2 different companies that support us there. But at any given time, we have 40-ish employees in India working our back office.
So that would be the 40 working the back offices. So are there essentially the Indian employees, and then there's 35 people that are not part of India?
Yeah, we have 35 domestic full-time employees.
So when you set up the India piece, first of all, do you remember how you got started there? Like I always think it's fascinating how people end up with their particular outsourcing company, their offshoring company. Like, how did you know where to start? And have you been with the same group of people from the beginning? Or like, are there still people that have been around for 6 years that you guys have?
Yeah, I can't take any credit for that, first of all. My first employee that I hired was Amity Mercado. She was running an outsourced, like a back office accounting firm she was managing 10, 15 different companies. And I knew with her accounting background that she would be good at doing all of our accounting, but then she could also do like the operations side because accountants can really understand the whole factoring
Yeah.
thing. So she was employee number one. She had to shut down her finance and accounting back office thing, but she was already outsourcing a bunch of that accounting to India. So she was already used to, doing phone calls at, 4 o'clock in the morning,
Right.
and understanding what they're good at and what they're not good at, how they're only as good as what you train them to do. They are very like, it's kind of like that setting on Anchorman when they're like, oh, he'll read anything, anything you put up there, he's going
He'll
to
do it.
read.
Yeah.
And with
Don't
our
put it
team
up
in
there.
India, they will do like, if you tell them here's these 10 steps, they're going to do those 10 steps, even if like step number 9 doesn't make any damn sense. And
Yeah.
it's like they throw in 3 extra zeros. They're not going to notice. Like they're going to do exactly that. That's the beauty of it. It means like if we tell them, here's the report that has to come out at 9:30 in the morning, and it's got to have these components, and it's got to do this at 9:30 in the morning every single morning. Like there's no like my kid was sick, my this was that. It's there, like come hell or high water. It may not
Yeah.
be done by the same exact person or whatever, but they are very consistent. And the work that they're doing, I mean, frankly, nobody here in the US wants to do.
You are listening to the Scalability Code. I'm your host, Matt Haney, founder of Sinclair Ventures, and we help visionary entrepreneurs like you get out of the shit show and focus on growing your business. We offer fractional COO and leadership coaching services that free up that brain of yours to focus on what's next. Learn more about us at sinclairventures.com. Now back to it.
Yeah, give us, because I know a little bit, but I don't think people realize the level of intimacy and the level of detail and the transaction volume that your teams have to process in order to be successful as a factory company. So give us a high level process for kind of what it looks like to bring on a client and sort of what you're doing. And I mean, I'm just overwhelmed thinking through all the different pieces and I don't know anything about it.
I mean, the biggest thing is control of cash. I mean, that's kind of step number one in a factoring relationship. As we talk about in our office, if you don't have control of the cash coming in, meaning the revenue coming in from their customers, then it's really not factoring. We're loaning money against their accounts receivable. If you're not collecting the money from their accounts receivable, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
And so just the nature of that part of the relationship, you can imagine 100 clients, they each have on average, I mean, let's just say 25 to 35 customers. So multiply that by 100. Those are all the customers. We're receiving 100% of all those payments from all those debtors, our clients' customers, all into one place, different accounts and blah, blah. And that has to get processed, organized, everything from the invoice is $1,000, but they got a check for $995. Like you have to process that. Money comes in and you don't even know what it's for. You got to go figure that out. So cash application is probably the number one thing. And we use a lot of technology that does it because you're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars. We process probably 50 million a week across 35 different bank accounts. Yeah. And we're only making a certain percentage on each, a fraction on each one. And so if you, lose $10,000 or whatever, that's a lot of transactions you have to go process and make up to get $10,000. You can just take $10,000 and divide that by 2%. And that's like the next amount of invoices you have to go process.
Just to
Sometimes
get back to
get back to even. Yeah. But it's a lot of, and of course, they do a lot more than just cash application. They do a lot of our underwriting process. So they pulling up, standardized reports and such. You can imagine all the reports and stuff we're pulling on a daily, weekly basis, reconciling, 35 different bank accounts.
Everyone's on a different system. I mean, presumably you're working with a business. I mean, yes, there's some commonalities in terms of, accounting platforms and such, but like, were you able to build a technology or how did that work? And I'm sure that's ever changing.
Yeah, and great question. I think there's two strategies in our business that you've seen when companies start getting big. They decide to invest in technology and write either their own operational software or compliance software, whatever that is. And I've never been a big fan of building our own tech. I'm not a tech guy. I'm not a software guy. I don't know how to go through that process of building it. And I also think we're one of like a couple hundred companies that do this. There's some pretty good standard platforms that already do what we're doing. And even though we all complain about them, oh, well,
Of course.
here's the 5 things that they can't do. And
The
you can go
reality
build.
is the 95% is great.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
completely underestimate what it takes to build the other 95%. And so
Yeah.
you can go build a program that does that 5%, but you're going
But
to
you're,
miss 25% that you took for granted because you just didn't think
yep.
about it. And so we haven't built any technology since we started the business. I said our technology best practice is going to be the processing integrations of all these different packages and platforms and how they work together. And we've gotten really good at that. And it doesn't seem that special. I won't be able to sell the company for, a 10-time multiple because I have some super, technology. But the
Yeah.
business has never been about technology. It's been about solving our clients' problems. And I just haven't seen a technology that does a much better job than what we're already doing today. And so we've never invested in that. I mean, we've invested a bunch of time and we pay a lot of money to other software providers. We have a system on the factoring side. We have a system on the asset-based lending side, a system for IP system, and there's systems all
Do
over the
any of
place.
them
But
speak to each other, or is it
well,
you're
they
looking
do
at?
now on our side.
Yay!
Yeah.
What'd you do? Tell me about that. How'd you get
I
it?
think they're all built around APIs. I mean, we keep our business fairly compartmentalized. And so I didn't want to spend a bunch of time putting the systems together because I want the portfolios and platforms to operate on their own because we do have an octopus type business model, at least from a strategic perspective of optimizing across 3 or 4 different tentacles so that if we did have a problem with one, not to say that you could cut it off and not affect the others, there's certainly but we run those portfolios as really as separate businesses because it has separate metrics, certainly different people, different skill set, different software to manage it. There's obviously some common areas in our company, like obviously HR, accounting, our sales, anyone can sell across the product lines, but actually managing those portfolios, we keep pretty compartmentalized. And so I didn't want everyone's like, well, can you get it and put it all together and stuff? We put it all together when it comes to doing the financials and the borrowing base for our senior lender, of
Banks.
course.
Yeah.
And that takes some time and, it's kind of manual, but it's not, there's still great
You've done
tools
it.
to do that.
Well, let's shift the gears. I want to ask you a couple questions about managing people. You've managed people your whole career. I was one of them. What are some of the struggles you see in yourself or positives you've seen in people that you've worked with over the years when it comes to, you mentioned junior level employees and the accountability they need and management. Like, what were your struggles and what were some aha moments you've seen?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple things that I do well, and then there's a couple things that I don't do well, and I think that probably goes for every owner or manager. I think recognizing that, it probably took me a long time to recognize that, but like I don't do great managing junior level people. I don't spend enough time with them. I don't particularly want to train them. I don't have the patience for it. Like I'm just not good at that. So I struggle with that, which is good because then that was part of the reason why we didn't want to hire any
Right.
of them. What I'm really good at is like I try to hire really good people, people that are smarter than me, people that have experience in the areas, whatever expertise they have at whatever level. They need to be the expert in whatever they're particularly doing, and then I need to get out of their way. If I can't do that, then I hired the wrong person. But we always talk about like, I'm going to give you enough rope to hang yourself. That's not the right environment for everybody. So you got to interview for that. And of course, everyone says that they want like autonomy. They want to drive their own thing and then do their own thing and be responsible for it. But then push comes to shove and it's like, well, now you have to be responsible for it. That doesn't always work for everyone. So, we actually somewhat hire, everyone says like hire slow and fire fast. I mean, that sounds great. We've always been hire fast and fire fast. Like you're not going to know what you have until you have it. Like you can't interview in these companies that do 10 interviews and stuff. I mean, great. For our business, that doesn't work. We're going to look at the history. We're going to get a good gut feel. That means that not everyone, makes it. Like on the sales side, it's easy because like the numbers don't lie. It's
data to track,
produce or you don't produce, but it's pretty self-selective. We have a very high performing team. And when you have a team member join that takes on the same level of responsibility or doing the same level of kind of work and focusing on the company and doing all those things, like you find out real quick and usually they kind of help self-select out.
They
It's
sure
pretty
do.
rare we have
You
to
mentioned this. I
make a
want to
change.
jump on for a second. You said something about salespeople. Obviously, I think salespeople are the easiest people to manage on the planet because they've got metrics, they're cash motivated. There's a dashboard to look at that says you're on track or off track. Did you find it hard, and how do you handle this now where it's like understanding if somebody is successful that's, in an administrative or a support role? I mean, obviously there's their quality of work, but if you look at those 35 people, would they all know in some way they're being successful, like at their job? And if yes, how? And if no, how do you know they're not being successful?
Yeah, it's tough. And we put together like a crazy like dashboard and metrics for operational folks at Far West Capital. And I think it had the opposite effect. The good people
Just
hated
pushes
it.
people down.
Yeah,
Yeah.
everyone hated it. Basically, it wasn't motivational, and you're coming
Right.
up with these kind of bullshit metrics just to say that
Yep.
you had
Just to say you do. Yeah. Yeah.
number
Yeah.
of phone calls, and then you have people
Yeah.
making
Come
calls
on.
for no reason. And so what we do is that we give people a lot of responsibility to get the work done. We don't care, when they do it, how they do it. Frankly, if they can figure out how to get their total job done in 4 hours, we wouldn't know if it took them 8 or not.
Yeah.
And I frankly don't care. And
Don't
so as
care.
long as the work is getting done, and we see it in the results. I mean, everything does come out at the end of the day. I mean, a good example is like an account manager. If we start having some AR that's aging off and I call the account manager, I can immediately tell if they're on top of that or not. It's one phone call, it's one discussion. You can really tell, like, well, I've called, you can get the answer of like, oh, well, I sent them an email last week. Okay.
Okay.
Or
Thanks.
you get I've called them 3 times. I've talked to so and so said this person was out of the office. I should hear back on this date and blah, blah, blah. And it's all documented in our system. And then I can go, okay, you're on top of your shit. I don't know how many hours it took you to get that. I don't care,
Yeah.
but it's done. And so it's things like that where you can just, you can just tell, and
Yeah.
you start getting feedback too. I mean, if they're not returning phone calls and stuff, your clients are going to let you know.
It is a tough scenario to step into a company of high performers like that. And I think you're unique in the sense that creating that culture is hard. And you mentioned it earlier that if you're not performing and you're part of the process and you're holding back part of that process, it's going to become very evident, and your people around you aren't going to be okay with the fact that you're holding up something or your lack of performance is affecting someone else's or the overall company. That's interesting. All right, I want to switch gears a bit because I do know a lot about you. And one of the things I love about you is you're a very intense person. I would call you a close friend, but a very intense human. What you do outside of work to fuel yourself and stay sane is fascinating to me. And I know you have a very successful endurance career and have run and done all sorts of adventure stuff. Are you still doing that today? And I know what you've transferred it over to if you're not. So tell us about your outdoor running skills.
Yeah, I mean, I've always been a fitness enthusiast and played soccer in college and transitioned to start running after college, just because it was easier to manage. And I've always been into kind of long distance endurance pursuits. Got into triathlons and then transitioned into trail running, which is what most people do when they get old and slow. But I really love being in the mountains and being able to go long in the mountains. And so, if you want to be able to do that, you have to stay in shape, and the only way to do that is by running. It's the only thing. I've struggled, obviously, with both getting older and just injuries. And running's an awful sport. You're going to get injured,
Yeah.
and it just takes a long time to come back from that. So successfully have come back from, I'm now a year from when I started running again, but 18 months for my double Achilles surgeries I had, and running again and actually feeling like a runner again. It took me a year to actually feel like a runner again. Signed up for my first race, and it's been 4 years since I had a race, but I signed up for my first race in September that I'm now
Congrats.
very.
Where are you doing it? Have you done it before? You know the
I
race?
haven't done this particular race. It's very similar to a race I did called UTMB, which is Ultra Trail of Mont
Yeah,
Blanc,
sure.
and which was one of my favorite races. It's a circumvention of Mont Blanc through 3 countries. It's phenomenal, and anything over
Incredible.
in Europe is better than here. No offense.
Yeah, of course. I agree. I agree.
Just
So
you
what
know,
is this one? Where is it?
same general thing. It's in Switzerland. It's only Switzerland and Italy, but it's a Ultra Trail of Mont Rosa. So it's called UTMR. Much more low key. UTMB is an enormous, like thousands of people, and it's like it's like the World Cup of ultra running. So this is much more low key. Still 100 miles and 39,000 feet of climbing. So
Whoa.
it's a lot. Big mountain, and so training in Austin obviously is always a challenge. But you know, it can be done. So yeah, I am running again. I love the people I run with and getting out there, and obviously I need that release from a get
Are
out
you the
of
type
work.
of
And
runner that will think of something and voice text to somebody while you're doing it as you remember about a specific thing, or do you really try to stay in the moment there?
yeah, I very rarely think about work when I'm running. I might
That's
start thinking
awesome.
about something when I start running, but it goes away pretty quick. And I don't have great ideas. Every once in a while, I'll think of something like, oh, I kind of need to do this. I certainly have never texted a business idea. I do when I'm driving, and people fucking hate it when I drive because I can't just sit there in the car. And I can listen to
Yeah.
podcasts. I'll have to listen to yours now, but so I make phone calls and I get a lot of shit done in the car because I got nothing else to think about. But for
Yeah.
running, I just don't think about work.
That's
Maybe I
so
should. Maybe
awesome. I mean,
maybe I should.
I
I don't
couldn't
know.
I couldn't do that. I couldn't spend the amount of time that you spend in that headspace and not think about opportunities for growth. But I love that you're able to stay in the moment. Is that because you're miserable through the grind, or it's just not never been something that's never been part of it?
Um, yeah, a lot of it is you are pretty miserable. I mean, most of the time when I'm running, I am. I wish I was that like, oh, it's this Zen moment, and I'm like this peaceful runner. But usually something that hurts, or I'm tired, and I'd rather be
Yeah.
walking. I'm finally now, and I was telling Angie this a few days ago that I'm finally gotten back into shape where my easy runs are actually easy. But it has taken a long time to get back to
Has it
that
been four
space.
years? Is that you haven't been a race in 4 years?
Yeah, I've
Wow.
paced some races and stuff, but I haven't actually done a race. But now I'm through these injuries and feeling really good. And
That's
yeah,
awesome.
knock on wood. Hopefully, I can stay injury free. Always ramping up the mileage is always the risk, but yeah,
You're
we'll
still
see how it
probably
goes.
not ramping up too much yet this far out. It's only February and you've got to go till almost February. You've got your races in September. So when will you start picking up that heavy mileage? Over the summer, the worst time to do it.
I mean, now, to be honest,
Yeah.
you got to
Oh,
build a pretty
really?
big, yeah, you got to build a pretty big base. So, we're getting into where, 50, 60 mile weeks and long runs. We're doing 20 every weekend right now. I've got the Austin Marathon that we're pacing in a couple weeks. So that'll be my first marathon in a long time. Granted, it's like I'm just pacing it. So that's kind of nice, at a nice
But you're
slow pace.
pacing at a different rate, right? You're not going to obviously
Yeah.
your UTMR race pace is not what the marathon.
Yeah.
What are you pacing?
I think I'm on the 355 group, so it's
Okay.
super slow. I mean, no offense to anyone
Yeah.
at 355.
No,
It's
I hear
it's
you.
it's
I know what you
a it
mean.
should be a benign pace. Hopefully, still at the end of the day, no matter how slow you're going, it's 26 miles. It's still
Yeah.
it's still some work for sure. There's a big difference. Like these training runs I'm doing at 20, there's a big difference. At the end of 20, I don't feel like running another 10K. That's for sure. So yeah,
And
running.
that's on the road.
Yeah,
That's not at elevation.
but yeah.
Um,
But the run's
that's awesome.
and running's good, and there's only so much running you can do, and it's super efficient. People are like, "How do you have time to do that?" It's like there's only so many hours that you can actually run. It's
Right.
fairly quick,
Yeah. All right, let's finish with my favorite hobby of yours, which is aviation. And that's a new hobby for you. How the hell did you get into that? I don't even know how that started. I just remember one
I mean,
day.
that is just the purest midlife crisis you could have. I mean, I was like verbatim of like, oh, I'm turning 50, and you start questioning, things you've done and things you haven't done. For me, it was always like I always wanted to do it, and I got to an age where I'm like, if I'm going to do it, like now's the time. If I waited any more, it's kind of a waste because you do age out of that hobby
Yeah.
fairly quickly. And I always wanted to do it. My wife was super scared about it. So it started out with being a challenge from a relationship perspective, but it got to a point where I
Mm.
was like, hey, this is something I have to do. You never have to do it with me. I just want to do it. I don't know where it's going to take me. I might quit in 2 weeks because the memorization side, like the learning side, flying a plane, super fun, obviously. And that's, but there is a lot of book smart that goes into getting that done. And I didn't know if I had the chops for that anymore. Both the, I mean, I've never been the smartest guy for sure. Dyslexia to the nth degree. Memorization is super hard for me. And so I knew that the book side was going to be a super challenge for
Mm.
me. That it was just going to require a bunch of time and flashcards and like we're old now. Like you don't want to
Memorization.
get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and start cramming for a test anymore, but you
No.
have to do that, and it's multiple tests. And once you get into it,
Yeah.
and that's when you find out, like, do you really want to do this, or do you just want to learn how to go play golf? So I really did enjoy it. I caught the bug, and I do love it. I love the challenge of it. I love the balance of like the intellectual challenge for sure, but also just like every day you can get a little bit better. To be a real professional at it, like it takes a ton of work, and I'm still just scratching the surface. I'm 700 hours in. I have a commercial pilot's license, and I'm always learning, first of all. But there's thousands of pilots that are way, and better is not like the right word for it, but their
More
level of
experienced.
experience and
Yeah.
professionalism and the things that you can learn from them are incredible. Because no matter how much school you go to and stuff, there's no substitute in the air for that in-air experience. And there's always like a next thing to go get. And for me, that's for someone who's a goal oriented, always having the next mountain to go climb. I love it. I'm working on my multi-engine right now. I don't even need it,
Nice.
but it's like, I want to go learn it. And so I'm studying. I did flashcards yesterday because it was a snow day and things were kind of slow. So I was doing flashcards on the side.
How do
But
you feel like getting ready for this race and training is taken away from that piloting piece, or like how do you not stay you're distracted by these things you love, your relationships, your work, your flying, the running, like how do you focus and compartmentalize that stuff?
yeah, compartmentalize is like a great way to do it. First of all, I'm pretty adamant about that. I'm not a huge sleeper, so that helps. Like I've always been able to operate on a fairly low level of sleep, but none of these things in itself like take up that much time. And I look at like how I could be, I don't want to say wasting my time, but like I don't do social media at all. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with social media. I know there's a big debate going on over it
But
now,
it's a
and
huge
Meta
waste
sued.
of time. Let's not act
It's
like it's not.
it's a lot of time. There's some benefits to it too. My wife knows more that's going on with her friends or whatever. And if I wasn't such an asshole, I would care more about other people and what schools their kids are going to.
Right,
And I
right,
just don't
right,
keep up with any of that stuff.
right.
I don't have room for it. And so I don't spend like really any time on that. There's plenty of things I do waste my time on. I mean, it's not like, I don't watch TV and do a lot of other
It's not
stuff
like you're
like
not
that.
on the controller website scrolling through airplanes, looking at avionics packages. Yeah, I get it.
Can you see my other
No,
screen
but
right
I've
now?
been there.
I literally have
Yeah,
controller up with a Vision
of
Jet
course
sitting
you
over
do.
here.
Looking at a,
You got to have the
that's
prize. You got to
funny.
have the eye on the prize, man.
Gotta have it. No, you said on something earlier that, you and I've talked about aviation a lot, obviously, and your commitment to doing it. My fear, openly throwing it out there, is that it's hard to get the ratings done and the memorization and the commitment. And, scared to start is kind of one of those things that I struggle with, or it's like, I really want to do it, but I don't want to set myself up for failure. So it's just easier not to. Well, you're the absolute opposite of that. I think once you put your mind to something, you're going to run through the wall to get it. And I admire that quality about you, that stubbornness. I'm sure Angie would say it's a bit challenging as well. She might also argue that all the things you do take time.
No, I'm sure she does.
I want to thank you for your time and the story and the opportunity to hear your background and obviously to catch up with you. And I'm glad to hear you got another event coming and also that you're working on your multi-engine rating. That's cool. So want to say thank you and want to catch up with you in a few weeks and hear how things are going. So thanks for joining us today, Jason.
Matt, great job, by the way. I was coming into this thinking like I got about 2 minutes of shit to talk about. So it shows you what a great host you are. And it is good to watch like you in this professional environment. And anytime I see someone who's doing like something that I would never be able to do what you're doing and do it in such a great way, in a professional way, and make it comfortable. And I could have sat here and talked for another couple hours. It shows you just like
Yeah.
what you do is super hard. And I know how you're helping your clients. I can't imagine the things that you're doing there. So one of these days we'll
Yep.
have to like flip the script and hear more about
Yes.
that. But I appreciate you having me on, and I enjoy the time.
You've always had a special place in my heart. You gave me an opportunity. I got to watch you in the best of times and the worst of times, and I'm proud to call you friend. And obviously, love the journey you've been on, and love the fact that you just keep getting up and going after it.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it, Matt.
Awesome, buddy. See you later.
Thank you for listening to the Scalability Code. If you made it this far, please follow the show on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Let's get out of this show together. We'll see you next time on the Scalability Code.